Today we're going to talk about the skill theme of kicking and punting. With kicking and punting, sometimes people look at it and think it's the same thing, yet it is very different. We think about the skill of kicking. Kicking is used primarily in sports such as soccer. In most areas today of the U.S., soccer is growing in popularity. So many times when we think about working on the skill theme of kicking, we relate it to soccer because of the familiarity with the students. When you're working on kicking, it does require accuracy, body control, point of contact, force, and direction. And by giving the students a variety of kicking opportunities, we can help to develop foundation of skills for use in various games. Because many games that we do play in physical education will require children to be able to use their kicking skills. With both of my children playing the game of soccer, I've noticed the difficulties that they have with certain aspects of the game, and I've also noticed some of the things it's easy for them to be able to pick up. For example, being able to pass the ball is a skill that develops early on, but some of the more complicated skills such as dribbling while moving, kicking for force, and kicking for accuracy, those things develop over time. So when we think about kicking, as a teacher, there's some observational points and some things that we want to focus on. Does the child make contact below the center of the ball, not the top? Because again, if they make contact on the top, the ball is going to stay on the ground, and many times they're not going to be able to put as much force into the ball. Is the child's kicking foot extended for contact on the shoelaces, not the toes? The biggest mistake children make when they start working on the skill of kicking is they kick with the toes. Well, some people say, well, what's wrong with that? Well, a child's not going to have very much control if they're kicking with their toes compared to the shoelaces or the inseam. Does a child's kicking leg bend in preparation for the kick and follow through after contact? Many times beginning kickers will be very stiff. They'll stand straight up instead of understanding how to balance their body to be able to generate force during the kick. And does the child's trunk incline slightly backward for the kick? If we look at the previous picture, you'll notice that the child is slightly bent backwards, but as we'll see on the next slide, you'll have a better understanding of what this looks like. So here we have a child taking a three-step approach to make contact with the ball. Notice in the top pictures using the hands to help maintain balance. You'll notice in the middle left, the child's non-kicking foot is directly beside the ball. This is another point of emphasis when you're working on the skill of kicking. Many children will place their non-kicking foot behind the ball, which means when they swing their leg, they're going to make contact on the top instead of the bottom middle. And then you'll notice on the follow through, the child does a good job of bringing the leg all the way through and maintaining balance on one leg. For younger children, this is very difficult because it's hard for them to maintain that balance as their body is moving forward. So when we think about kicking, we want to contact the ball with your instep, your shoelaces, not your toes. So the first blank is going to be shoelaces. The second blank is going to be behind the ball. Contact the ball directly behind the center for travel forward at a low level. And then the final blank is going to be beside the ball. And this is where we want to place our non-kicking foot when we are striking the ball. Now we look at the different levels of kicking. We have pre-control, control, utilization, and proficiency, similar to the previous ones that we've looked at. With pre-control, we're simply wanting kids to make contact with a stationary ball. So we think about it from an open skill or a closed skill perspective. It is very closed skill because the child is initiating the movement. The ball is not moving, so it's in a closed environment. We move up to the control level. We're kicking now for accuracy, and we're also kicking with a partner. So now we're including an element that brings more of an open condition to the kicking task. As we move up to utilization, we're performing skills on the move and with an opponent. As you remember me saying before, my children, the task became much more difficult when they were having to maintain control of the ball as they were moving. So now you see why that is at the utilization level. When you add an opponent, it makes it very difficult because now not only are you trying to maintain possession of the ball, but now you have someone who's trying to take it away from you who doesn't have a ball at all, which makes it a little bit easier for them. And then finally, proficiency level, and this is very similar for all skill themes, is game situation with other players, requiring understanding of complex relationships and strategic developments. As we've said before, many teachers skip all the way over to proficiency with all children when many children are not ready for this until after much time of practice as it relates to their kicking ability. So now we talk a little bit about the skill of punting. So the question becomes, which one do you think would be easier? For almost all children, punting is going to be a more difficult skill. With kicking, many times you start out with a ball that is stationary. But with punting, not only do you have to coordinate your body, but you also have to kick a moving target. So punting is a much more difficult skill. So after they've mastered kicking, then you can progress to punting. Many times I don't introduce punting until the 4th or 5th grade with children because I know any child earlier than that is not going to be ready to learn that concept. It is a difficult skill requiring coordination of various body movements, and it introduced only after children have practiced other kicking skills. Some key observational points for punting is the ball dropped rather than tossed. This is number one because almost all children, when they first learn how to punt, they will toss the ball up into the air. And what that does, it does have an impact on the coordination of the movement. If I start my movement but I toss the ball up, my leg is going to be swinging and the ball is just going to start making its descent down to your foot. So it makes the task very difficult. Is contact made at the right height for a 45-degree angle of flight? Now for most children, they may not understand what that is. So many times we need to use flowcharts and pictures to help them understand where contact needs to be made. So here we have a picture of what a good punting performance looks like. You'll notice in the top picture, the child has the ball at a medium level. The child is taking a two-step approach. You'll notice in the middle pictures, the ball is not tossed, it is dropped. The child is leaning backward. The kicking leg is at a 90-degree angle, so it is back, which is going to help to create the force. The knee comes forward with the foot following, and then if you look at the bottom picture, contact is made on top of the foot, and then you have good follow through. If you look at the follow through, it does look very similar to kicking. The biggest difference here is that you have a ball that's moving instead of being stationary. So you see similarities between kicking and punting. That is the number one difference. So when we look at cues for punting, you want to kick with the shoelaces, contact the ball with your instep, not your toes. Eyes on the ball, watch the ball until it contacts your foot because now we're kicking a moving target, and then drop the ball. So if you're working on the skill of punting, these are the three words that you're going to be using most often: shoelaces, eyes on ball, and drop. So when teaching punting, we have the different levels. With pre-control, you want to start by contacting lightweight balls with the foot, both after bounce and before it reaches ground. So instead of just dropping it, you can have a child bounce the ball and then make contact to punt it. And then control level, punting for distance, height, and accuracy using different types of balls. And utilization level involve combining punting with other factors: partner relationships, time limits, accuracy, dynamic situations. So you want to put them in situations where the movements are influenced by outside variables. And then proficiency, again, it's going to be very similar to game-like situations. And so when we look at the progression spiral for kicking, starting at the proficiency level, and again when we get into the gymnasium, we'll look at some of these different activities. At the proficiency level, you're going to have game situations. At the utilization level, you're going to have kicking while moving, also with a partner. And then the control level and all the way down to pre-control level, you'll notice that the task does get easier, and it also reflects the goal of each of the levels that you're going to be teaching to. And then finally, punting, similar to that, proficiency all the way down to pre-control. If you look at pre-control, dropping, balancing, and kicking lightweight balls. And then if you work your way up to proficiency, again, it's going to be similar to what game-like situations would look like.